I'm absolutely delighted to be back in Korea. This is actually my third trip here and my second KOTESOL. And I'm always really, really happy to have the opportunity to come back. I like coming here a lot. So, what we're going to be talking about this morning is the transition from elementary to secondary school. And it sort of fits into the conference theme in the way that, far from being the road less travelled, from a theoretical perspective at least, this is a road that is actually untravelled, I would say, from a theoretical perspective. I've got the camera in the middle, so I'm not quite sure how to. I don't know whether everybody should come over to this side, maybe. That might make it a bit easier. I don't know. Would you mind? Because otherwise, with the camera in the middle, I can't come.
He's going to be exhausted by the end of the time.
If I keep it backwards and forwards, yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry about that, but it's just that it just makes it easier to talk.
Well, keep looking.
So, as I was saying, it's a road that's basically untravelled in terms of any kind of theory it would seem, and given the situation with the introduction of English into elementary schools, that might seem rather surprising because obviously it becomes a major issue. On the other hand, in terms of practice, of course, it is widely an issue because teachers and school administrations are having to deal with this transition on a daily basis. But before I go any further, what I'd like you to do is just to reflect. Can I ask where I know Sean's from Japan. Is everybody else from Korea? Bill's from Hong Kong. Everybody else is based in Korea. I'd just like to start with asking you just to think with the person next to you for a couple of minutes. In your context, are children well prepared for the transition from elementary to junior high school or middle school? I'm not sure. Is it middle school in Korea? This is one of the problems we had doing the questionnaire. I'll come back to that later. Middle school in your context. Are they well prepared for English? I'm thinking of English specifically. Are they well prepared? If so, why is that? If not, why not? Are there any strategies that are used, official strategies for the transition? And what should successful transition involve in your view? And it's going to give you literally a couple of minutes, but can you just maybe think about that with the person next to you? Okay, this is obviously, as always happens when I talk on this topic, it always creates quite a lot of interest. But of course time is rather tight, so we do need to move on. So are children well prepared in your context? No. Everybody's shaking. Nobody's nodding.
We don't know. I actually don't know. I'm in elementary. I have no idea. And they don't
Good point.
And they don't know what's happening in elementary, so they don't know.
Okay, good point. You don't know. Yeah.
No communication between.
So there's no communication.
Yeah, and I was saying I don't even have communication with the Korean teachers. I have no idea what they do in their other English class even. So there's no transparency whatsoever. It's just sort of...
Okay. Any other views? Yeah.
Some of my students who go to this school sometimes contact me and tell me that they don't like English anymore because when they were in elementary school they did lots of activities and fun stuff, but not doing it anymore in middle school.
Okay. Yeah.
The textbook change is a big problem.
The textbook change.
Yeah, because they go from pictures and, like she said, activities and games to all of a sudden, they're looking at something. It's not a big difference.
Okay, great. Any other points?
In Japan, they just started in 2011 from grade 5, and right now the junior high still assumes 0. So even though they are doing something, the junior high school program assumes nothing. So there's wasted stuff.
Yeah. And that might be, there might be a justification for that for Japan because it was only introduced in 2011, but in Korea it was introduced in 1997, and in Italy even before that, and they still assume 0. So there are no strategies used at all at the moment that you're aware of here to facilitate the transition? No. And what should it involve, in your view? What should successful transition look like?
more seamless. Like, as it is, it kind of looks like Frankenstein. But it's like, okay, well, this is a really nice looking arm, and this is a really nice looking head, but when you see them next to each other, they're kind of awkward.
They don't kind of.
I think there's a huge jump in the development levels between the two different expectations in English. So you're missing out this big chunk of development.
Right.
I think that's where you lose a lot of the interest in English because they're just.
It's too big a jump then,
It's too big a
the
jump.
way it's done at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, thanks for your input tonight. I just want to get sort of your own point of view, because what I'm going to do in this presentation is talk a bit about research that we did with the British Council. We were given some British Council funding. Actually, as a follow-up to a study we've done on English in primary schools, in elementary schools. Some of you might be familiar with the report, the British Council report we did for that. This was a follow-up because obviously the next natural step is, well, what happens after elementary school? And what you're saying is very interesting because, again, we did took a global view on it, but of course, as you'll see as I go through the presentation, the issues are the same globally. Just a little bit of background to start with. Just why is transition important? Well, you know, it is because of this expansion of English to elementary school. As I said yesterday, this is probably the biggest innovation in English language teaching over the last few years. And as Cameron pointed out in 2003, it is a shift that has a knock-on effect, particularly at secondary level. Up until relatively recently, English started at secondary level with its introduction in elementary schools. That clearly has a knock-on effect. And in particular, Cameron noticed the issues of the creation of mixed level classes, especially at secondary school, although I would argue that that's a problem at elementary school as well. And I know it's a problem in Korea because I've spoken to Korean teachers about it. And of course the motivation of the children, as you yourselves were saying, partly because of the change from elementary to secondary, but partly because of the need to sustain the motivation over so many more years once you introduce it into grade 3 or grade 1, as I believe they're now talking about here. So, as Cameron concluded, teacher education and secondary foreign language teaching that take TEYL seriously may look quite different from earlier models that served a system in which language learning began around 11 years of age. It's a big shift. However, as I said, as far as we could see, we did lots of searches, we looked and looked. There's very little work being done on transition. Sean's work in Japan is one of the exceptions to that, but there's very, very little work being done to really identify what the problems are. Another exception is the Prosecco project in Europe, and it's worth just mentioning this very briefly because they came up with some recommendations, at least from a European context, which may sound as if I'm starting from the end here, but I think it's worth saying what they found in their project, and then we can compare that with the data that we got from the teachers themselves. So their recommendations were regular meetings for teachers. It's about contact. A lot of it was about contact. So contact between teachers at different levels, contact between parents, pupils and schools, and some kind of bridge between these two levels. As you yourselves were just saying, there's this big gap between the two levels. So they were basically their recommendations. So let's look at the research that we did. I'll just tell you a little bit about the project and how we went about it first, and then we'll look at some of the key outcomes. There was a team at Aston led by Anne Burns, who you might know from her work on action research. And we were basically interested, as I say, in the issues in transition, in the challenges for teachers, but also in identifying any strategies that are being used that could maybe be transferred to other contexts, would maybe resonate in other contexts. So also the similarities and differences that were going on from one context to another. We used a mixed method approach, the same approach really that we'd used in the previous Learner project, with quantitative and qualitative data. So we had a survey, we had an online survey, that was our main instrument. One of the biggest problems in the online survey, because we had one version for elementary school teachers and one version for middle school teachers. And it was what to call those two levels. Because when you're doing a global survey, different countries call them different things.
Yes.
So, you know, was it secondary, was it junior high, was it middle, was it high? What did we? In the end, we called it level 1 and level 2. And we tried to explain in the instructions what we meant by level 1 and level 2. So hopefully we got the right teachers doing the right question. We also did some interviews in a variety of countries. These were very opportunistic in the sense that if any of the team were visiting a particular country, they got in touch with some teachers to try to get a little bit more information and get a broader picture and a more in-depth picture of what was going on. We were intending to do document analysis to try and get sort of official documentation, and guess what? There wasn't any. So we couldn't actually find official documentation, except in very rare cases, about transition. So let's have a look at the survey. First of all, this is just what we asked. We asked about information about the context, about strategies used, and about the challenges faced, and also about the teachers' opinions. So the same question I was asking you, what in your view would be successful, would make successful transition? This is the data that we got. We got 393 level 1 teachers, 486 level 2 teachers from 62 countries. It was very much opportunistic sampling again, which is why it's very unbalanced. So nothing is generalisable clearly, because we got far more responses from places like Turkey, Portugal and Malaysia than from other countries. So it's a snapshot. It's a picture of what's happening. It's not generalisable in any way. Any questions or comments so far? Do feel free to make any comments as we go. I'm perfectly happy to have people make comments as we go through. Because I know this is, you know, it's kind of your experience as well, so it's fine.
I have a question about the gap. Is the private industry here, does anybody know, doing anything to kind of help with middle school kids or elementary kids transitioning and all that?
Oh, is the private sector
industry doing anything?
As far as-
know of that?
Okay, as far as I know, some schools, some hard ones do actually try and do kind of transitioning classes, but it's very few and far between. And a few schools try to get the elementary school students to the middle school during the last week.
Yeah, just for a day.
You know, for a day visit kind of thing, but that's about the extent of it.
So there is some private.
To build on that answer, there's also there's a fair number of schools that have both elementary and middle school
Together.
Like ours is one
Yeah.
chain school, and all of those schools, whether they're cognizant of it or not, are having to do something with the transition.
Yes.
That's an interesting point actually, because what I would do now is move on to the findings, and I just want to present today some of the findings. Obviously there are more than this, but what I want to look at here is whether the teachers felt that the children were well prepared for the move or not, and the reasons for that, and the challenges that they face, the challenges that the teachers said they faced, but also finish with some examples of strategies that are being used in different countries, and solutions, therefore, that have been found. But what was interesting, especially in terms of the challenges, was one area where there seemed to be fewer challenges was where the elementary school and the middle school were all one. Although not necessarily, because somebody was telling me yesterday that they're in that situation, but even there they start from the beginning again at high school, so it doesn't always work. But certainly the responses we got were that where the school was one, it
How
wasn't
common are
such a...
they though?
No, I don't think, I interviewed some teachers in Russia, and they said that that's how it works in Russia, it's all continuous. So,
Well, in South Africa, where I grew up, same sort of thing.
It's all continuous.
Where I'm at in the rural areas, it tends to happen, but there
Okay.
it's still not common.
No, it's not common.
International schools will have the primary and the secondary
In the same campus, but then do they talk to each other?
No, they do talk to each
They
other.
do,
They're very
yeah.
closely linked.
Yeah. I mean, the teachers who responded to our questionnaire who said they were in the same kind of junior, elementary and middle school actually had a continuous curriculum across the two schools. So it wasn't an issue. You know, they said transition is not an issue. There is no transition. It's continuous. So are the children well prepared for the move? This is what the elementary school teachers said. So this is yes, this is no, and this is maybe. Bit of disagreement there. But look at the level 2, this is the secondary, this is the high school teachers. There's the no. Ah. And there's the yes. Right. And there's the maybe.
Maybe.
Okay.
So obviously secondary school teachers far less convinced that the children were prepared for the move. When we asked them why, the reasons for the answer, you know, why the children aren't prepared, what was interesting about that was that at both level 1 and level 2, so elementary and middle school, the answers were about the way that English is taught, not about the actual move itself, if you see what I mean. It was all about, you know, they don't do enough speaking, or we don't do enough listening, or our books aren't right, that sort of thing. So elementary teachers focused in particular that the method was wrong. Not enough hours was another reason. Not enough training for teachers. It was pretty much the same reasons I was talking about last night, actually. English not valued at elementary level. And I know that's a problem in some countries. In Japan in particular, isn't it? That it's, and in other countries, Portugal as well, a lot of Portuguese teachers said they have the problem that English is just not given any value at elementary school. Unequal access, etc., etc. Mixed level groups. The secondary teachers, the level 2 middle school teachers, they said it was lack of training of the elementary teachers. They blamed the elementary school teachers and the preparation. So the blame, secondary school teachers squarely put the blame on elementary school, what was happening at elementary school. And again, they said though that they themselves had too few hours. They had large classes and poor resources. So some of the problems were actually very similar. And this is just, I just thought you might like to see these, a couple of the frustration that some of the teachers feel. You know, they don't even have a printer, of course we don't have any strategies for transition. Or, Turkey, you should see the book, then you'd understand. So there was quite a lot of frustration around for the teachers as well. So the challenges that they faced, the challenges that they identified. So the first one was there's no continuity in the syllabus. We tried to kind of split these issues into 3 levels. One was national level, so government policy level. The second level we were looking at was school level, and the third level was sort of classroom level. But actually, they do cross over. It's quite hard to divide them like that. I mean, this is clearly a national issue in most countries because syllabuses are mainly designed at national level. But there's no continuity from level 1 to level 2, and this is exactly what we were saying. Get to middle school and start again. And that's what we found that most of the teachers were saying. So, for example, in Portugal, they said English was brought into the level 1 curriculum, but the level 2 syllabus stays the same. It's not changed. Starting all over again. Schools level 2 again. Schools start all over again. A key issue that the teachers themselves identified was no training opportunities. And this was actually a suggestion from the teacher in Lithuania, that he or she felt that what was really needed was practical training in how to deal, ideas, techniques, methods, and how to make the transition easier. So teachers felt there was no preparation for them. They weren't given any preparation. Contact between teachers, again, this is one that you were talking about. it tends to be either very ad hoc or completely non-existent. So this teacher, this elementary school teacher in Croatia, said the lack of communication between level 1 and level 2 teachers. So the teachers just don't have enough information about the students. Lack of resources was identified as a key issue. Although I think there's kind of, I mean, if you see this is from Columbia, a secondary school teacher who said, you know, we don't have the right resources, books, CDs, smartboards, laptops. Quite a few of the teachers complained about lack of access to the internet, lack of computers, although quite how that relates specifically to transition isn't clear to me. And I think that's a general kind of lack that teachers feel that they have. And of course we might want to question just whether having an internet connection makes you a better teacher, but that's a different story. Again, something that you were saying, expectations. The change in expectations from level 1 to level 2. And I think this is a nice quote here. Difficult, it's very difficult. This is from Poland. New surroundings, new friendships, new relationships, new social bonds, new peers that they have to measure themselves against. And then she finishes off, mostly they are at a loss, and so is the teacher. So managing those expectations between elementary school and middle school, as you were saying. And then finally is the issue of mixed level. When you're going to a middle school and you're drawing on children from different primary schools, even if they followed the same national syllabus, of course their levels are not necessarily going to be the same. This teacher also raised the issue of social differences, which can also create inequalities and differences in level. This was in China. So the fact that there's he or she here seems to be implying as well that there's no opportunity to kind of stream different levels. They have to keep them all in the same class, although they have very mixed levels, which obviously can be an issue for teaching. That's 7, isn't it, actually? Different pedagogical aims and methodological approaches, and again this is exactly what you were saying, and this was actually a quote from South Korea. More formal work in English at level 2 as opposed to level 1, which is more informal and more well-rounded. But in fact this was a comment that we got from a lot of different countries. Lots of games and play and informal learning at elementary school, and then they go to middle school and they're sat behind a desk and do grammar exercises. And tests. Tests. So they're not tested at elementary school?
Oh yeah, lots of tests. There are sort of tests, but it's not anywhere near the level of stress that they experience when they get to middle school.
Yeah.
Actually, about 5 years ago, they started a national test because they heard so many students are failing in middle school. So when elementary school students are finishing their 6th grade, they have a national test, which covers all the 4 years of English learning.
Right.
So it's kind of the last minute of wrapping up, like if they understand this word or not.
But what's the test based on? What does it test?
What is that test? It's
Grammar.
Grammar, listening, writing. But writing part is really small. It's more like filling the blank of the like using the word.
Yeah.
It's mostly about the listening and reading.
Listening and reading. But then does that have an effect on the teaching that's done in?
Yes.
Yeah.
It actually kills the teaching.
Kills them, yeah, because then no more games and songs. And
They actually make
That's
hundreds of pages of like test printers so students can memorize the answers. So not to make them fail, because it will affect to the school's evaluation somehow.
yeah.
That's preparation for middle school.
Yeah,
Preparation.
That was the main idea behind it, was to get the practice so they would be better.
But then you get the backwash effect on what's happening and how they're actually taught in primary school. And in fact, I was talking to some primary school teachers at a university here on Thursday, and one of them was actually, she said that was the big issue she faced. She was actually doing a TESOL certificate in young learning, teaching young learners. And she was pretty desperate, saying, well, how can I put this into practice when my students are taking a grammar-based exam? Right. Let's move on now. So, but the picture is not all gloom and doom. on around the world, and this is, I think it's very important to look at what local solutions are happening to see how they might be able to inform what's going on in other places. So, obviously, the first one is you have a continuous curriculum across levels 1 and 2, and apparently that's actually happening in Cuba. It's also happening in Sweden, I know, and I suspect in other Scandinavian countries. I just know because that's where we got the data from Sweden. They have a 12-year continuous English curriculum all the way through. Of course, that's not necessarily going to help. I mean, that's not so simple, because if you've got different elementary schools even doing the same national syllabus, the kids are not necessarily going to all come out with the same level when they all go to the same secondary school. So maybe the ideal is to have that continuous school, but that is probably unlikely. So a continuous curriculum, however, would certainly be a start. Ensure contact between the level 1 and level 2 teachers. And in Turkey, for example, they have a website, they have a curriculum mapping site, so that they can see each other's curriculum. That was a regional initiative, it's not national, it's only regional in one particular region. Organise meetings across school, but actually within the same level. They found in Malawi the fact that they were actually able to talk to other teachers from other schools at secondary level was also helpful. They discuss their common problems and find solutions, and it helps share their ideas. Organise reciprocal observation and teaching. These are all from a teacher's point of view. I'm looking at these from a teacher's point of view to start with. So, for example, in China they had demonstration classes, so the teachers themselves could go and see what was happening at level 1 and what was happening at level 2. Again, for teachers, this was from Germany, organised periods of exchange where level 1 teachers teach in level 2 schools and vice versa. Now this was actually by accident, because if you look, she said, in fact, he or she, the school sent me to primary school because there was a lack of English teachers. You know, common around the world. There's a shortage of teachers to teach in primary schools, and very often secondary school teachers are used. But, she said, it was the best experience that she could possibly have had, because she got a feeling for what it meant to teach these primary school kids who then came to the secondary school. Working with managing expectations. Now we get on to sort of from the parents and the learner's point of view. Managing expectations. So work with parents and students. In Lithuania, they organise the visits to the schools, but they also hold meetings with parents to explain what the expectations are going to be. Notice how most of these say things like my school, the school, our school administration. These are all at school level, individual school level. Introduce the more formal learning approaches of level 2 into level 1. Get the kids used to it. I'm not sure giving them an exam is the best way of doing it, but at least give them tasters of what. So in China, for example, in the final year, they switch more to middle school type methodology, so it's less traumatic when the kids move up. Introduce the level 1 students to the level 2 syllabus. So start to introduce not only the teaching methodology but also the content of the high school syllabus. That was in Malaysia. I noticed that they do that during a holiday programme. How happy the kids would be to give up their summer. To do that, I'm not sure. But, that's what they do. Provide additional learning materials to prepare students. So in Ethiopia, they give them worksheets and extra tutorial sessions. So extra material, extra tuition for students making the transition. Again, in that particular school. Or induction programs, again, for students can be useful. In Hong Kong, again, I notice it's a summer one. So in this particular case, they go through a bridging course, so it introduces them to what it means to go. So this is all about, obviously, preparing the learners for the transition. Again, Hong Kong, they said they use portfolios of work to help the teachers at high school. So the kids go to the middle school, go to the middle school with a portfolio of work so the teachers can get some idea of what they've done. And again, Japan, this was happening in a particular place in Japan, they have a pretext to basically review and bridge. Do you know anything about that? I don't know, of course I don't know what region that was or what department it was. A bridging text.
It's not done national.
No, that's it'll just be a local again.
Yeah. My children's school in Japan also try to link a little bit
between.
Because I'm doing research on it, and they were my pilot.
So they're aware of
this.
Yeah. And then finally, when they actually move, when they actually get to high school, two things that were happening in Turkey. They have a period of consolidation, so they accept that they will have a period when they try to get the children, that will basically they revise what they've done at elementary school and try to get them all on the same page, if you like. And I like this last one, that they acknowledge in a positive way the English that the students have already learned. I think it can be so motivating for the children to get to secondary school and then have to start again. But what they said in this school in Spain is that they were acknowledging that the children did know English, that they had done English. They were trying to put across a positive message to the children, even if they were having to go backwards, if you like. So, in sum, what have we learned from this? Transition is not in any way systematic and is not, as far as we can see anywhere, operated at a national level. It's very, very much dependent on individual teachers or individual schools. At best, regions or districts or departments. Many teachers are not actually even aware that it's an issue. I mean, the fact that a lot of the answers focused on what they were doing themselves, you know, I don't have enough time, or my books aren't good enough, or my teaching isn't good enough, it's not actually specifically about transition. I mean, I can see obviously that's how they're seeing it, but they're not actually that much aware, and that could well be due to the lack of contact between any kind of, between the schools and between the teachers. And as I say, some work being done at school level, but seems to depend very much on the administration of the school and the goodwill of the school and of the teachers themselves. However, one positive final outcome that we did find was this teacher from Pakistan, who said, this aspect of language teaching has not been considered by me earlier, but this questionnaire is broadening my teaching horizon and I will do something about it.